Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of The Story Behind the Shot. I'm so happy to have Nikunj Patel here with me. How's it going?
Hey Ray, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I freaking love this image. And correct me if I'm wrong, did you get more than one image from this morning, or was it just this one that you kind of walked away with that day?
I got quite a few image from this morning,
Yeah.
um, and I even got them. I got these three ducks taking off as well.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yep. So my entire morning, I spent about 4.5 hours, and
Yeah.
these images were taken in the last 15 minutes of that morning.
No kidding. That's awesome. So I'm really excited to hear like the whole story of this shot. But I gotta say, man, just the shapes, the graphical nature of this image, the way the ducks stand out in it, the position of them. I love that you actually went with what a lot of people don't do very often, a centered composition, but it works so well with this scenario. There's just so much to like about this. And like, I'm sure you've experienced before, but how wonderful is it to shoot in the fog like this?
Yeah, I've consciously spent a lot of time this winter photographing in fog. I've
Yeah.
made a decision consciously going as I would check the forecast the day before and would see that there's fog in forecast. I'd figure out a way to get to a location where I can photograph subjects in fog.
That's really smart. Yeah. That's really cool. So your life, your schedule allows you to kind of do that and get out in those mornings when it was predicted like that as often as
Yes,
possible.
and luckily some of the outings that I went during fog coincided with weekends. So
Yeah.
I would say I got lucky.
Yeah.
There are times that I can get away during the week, but most times I target my shooting time is most times over the weekends.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Excellent. So let's take it all the way back. So tell me the story of the shot.
So I just want to give you some background. There's a local lake near my house where I've been photographing. I would say maybe 3, 4 years now.
Okay.
Uh, and previous years, I would strictly set up for frontlit shots at this particular location. Accidentally, last year at this lake, I arrived on a March morning,
Mm-hmm.
and it was foggy conditions, but with a strong sunrise, so
Yeah.
I could get really nice, beautiful backlight with the rising sun. So that got me motivated this winter to spend my time photographing the same ducks in in foggy conditions.
Yeah.
So I'd monitored at this particular lake this year, leading up to this shot, that there were going to be a few foggy days. So I arrived at the lake, and it was a really nice, beautiful morning, and it looked like it was going to be good backlit sunrise conditions.
Yeah.
However,
Wow.
it,
Look at
it
that.
didn't turn out. It didn't turn out to be that way.
Okay.
Um, and when I arrived, it's the blue skies were replaced with really, really strong fog as I arrived.
Yeah.
And I literally walked around the entire lake, and I ended up in the same place because there were no ducks at this location.
Oh.
Uh, but what I didn't realize that there were ducks. I just could not see them. It was that strong off of fog.
Yeah.
So what I did was I just waited out and see. There's not much flying right now. There were no ducks at this lake. And then all the way on the left, I saw those three ducks,
Yeah.
the same three ducks that are in my image.
Okay.
And I kept photographing from the vantage point, but nothing good was coming out. And at the last moment, I just said, maybe I should just walk around the other side and see if I can line them up in a better position.
Yes.
And that's what led to that image, because I changed my position. I went more towards the left, and
Okay.
luckily they lined up right behind the trees.
No kidding. So you were being a little bit more mobile in this outing, walking around the sides of the lake and stuff like that, huh?
Yeah, so I made as I arrived, I didn't see anything. So I hiked around the lake. I
Yeah.
came back to the same spot. Then
Yeah.
I could see those ducks on the left. I
Okay.
photographed them, but compositionally there was nothing. It was just white. It was just fog, absolute fog.
Gotcha.
Um, and at the last moment, I decided, and I said maybe I should move towards the left. I don't have anything to lose. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
Worse is going to be another fog image.
Gotcha.
But they lined up right across the trees, and that's how I was able to get the photograph that I wanted.
Very cool. So when you first got there, this is what it looked like before the sun even came up, right? Just like completely thick like that. And so that's where it's like it's hard to even see anything out there. And then the sun starts coming up, kind of burning through it a little bit. And we got another beautiful video. I mean, what a gorgeous morning, right? My goodness.
Yes. Yeah.
Just absolutely stunning. And so is this the sort of bank, like the trees that are behind them in the final image right there? Was it that closer shoreline, or is it something further out? What did you end up lining them up with?
It's right there. It's this image. If you see right by the sun, those are the trees where the ducks were.
Wow. That's so cool. And so then the final image ended up being 600 millimeter. Okay. So yeah, a lot of focal length. So you were really able to, like, this is the cool thing too, that I think is hard to translate to a lot of people, especially beginner photographers, is like you look there and you see a scene like this, right? And those ducks were pretty far out, weren't they? Like they were not close to you. So most people would just entirely ignore them, probably not even maybe take the photo or point their camera at them. But because of that fog, I mean, look at that.
Yes. And I know this lake intimate because on the other side, I photographed ducks from the other side. So I know where the trees are. I know the shape of the trees.
Yeah.
So I knew what to expect as far as if I could line up, I was looking at the scene while I was walking, and I know if those ducks just lined up right behind those trees, I'll be able to get a good shot.
Yeah. Do you think this is an image that would have worked if there was no fog?
No, it would not have worked at all.
Right? They would just blend into the background.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool how fog can allow us to, transform a scene to A, get something interesting when we couldn't without fog, but then B, it just not only does it allow us to get a shot, but it elevates it so much more, It really does. Like, what a mood this sets.
Yep. And also, the other thing is there are no leaves on the trees. They're bare in the winter. So that translates into perfect shape of the trees, because if you have leaves, it's going to be a little bit different. It's the perfect setting for the winter conditions.
Well, and again, talking about reflections and stuff like that without fog, if there was no fog there, the reflections of those trees would be so clear and dominant, because they're such big and bold shapes. I mean, they really are. They're very strong, graphical, eye-catching shapes. But because of the fog, they're hazed in the background. They're softer. Even though they're bold lines that really do get your attention, my eyes still go right to these ducks, right in the middle. I can't miss them. They're the darkest thing in the photo. They're the only thing in focus. I mean, I absolutely love it.
And another decision that I made, I started out shooting at f4, but I wanted the ducks in focus, and I said I'm going to go to 7.1. And if I had more time, I would have gone to a little bit more, just to make sure that the subjects are in focus a little bit.
And so you have some shots at f4 and some at 7.1. Did you like more or less what the trees were doing in the background? Were they becoming a little bit more, well-defined at the higher apertures than they were at wide open apertures?
Yes.
And that was a better improvement to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, very, very cool. Because that was so funny. I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be my next question. I was going to ask if you would have preferred them to be closer to you or closer to the background, but it seems like you kind of played with your own depth of field to get that relationship of sharpness between the birds and the background where you wanted it.
Yeah, and if I had these conditions, maybe let's say when I started out photographing, I would say 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
I I would have just kept shooting with my settings as is.
Yeah.
But now, as over time, I think about it a little bit more in the field and say, maybe I can take a step back and look at my settings
Yep.
and adjust on the fly, because it's as you photograph more, you learn more.
Yeah.
You have that intuition to now go make the settings while you're photographing, to think about, hey, how do I want it? How do I want to compose and everything? Rather than just a few years ago, I would have just kept shooting without
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah. Yeah.
what am I photographing at that point?
I would do the exact same thing. I can very much relate to what you're saying there, especially when it comes to that aperture and depth of field. I mean, for years, I just shot everything wide open all the time. And while that's still the dominant way I shoot most of the time, there's so many times where I think there are reasons, valid reasons, to close down for that aperture. And it's not just to get my subject in focus, it's to play with that change of how much out of focus do I want my background? Do I want to bring in more and that sort of thing? And it's a really fun sort of growth path that has changed over the course of the years. Yeah. I have another question for you.
Yes.
So vertically, you sort of have them close to the center there. Did you play around with placing them higher in the frame, lower in the frame? What brought about keeping them centered in the frame there? Because I got to say, I love it, and I know why. I'm just curious to hear your thinking behind that.
See, if when I looked at the ducks through the viewfinder, I wanted them lined up with the trees over there. I wanted them between the trees.
Yeah.
And that's the only place.
Yep.
If I had moved the ducks to the left, it would not have been a strong scene for me. Yeah. And I really just wanted them between the reflection of the trees. And that's the reason I decided to compose them in the middle of the screen.
The symmetry here is so strong. The symmetry, especially vertically, it's almost there horizontally. I mean, we do have this one boulder tree over here that we don't quite have on that side, but it still lays out so nicely. But that vertical symmetry from top to bottom is so strong that I think, if you were to place them higher in the frame, we'd lose that. If you place them lower in the frame, we'd lose that. And so many waterfowl photographers, like the standard is put the bird on that bottom third, right? But you would lose most of this reflection down there. And I have to agree with you. It would not have worked quite as strongly. And I also think a single bird wouldn't have worked quite as strongly here, because the three sort of give you that almost horizontal line that's helping to kind of almost divide that photo in half, top to bottom. It's just, there's so many things that work out wonderfully. And thank you, birds, for all facing the same direction.
Yes. Yeah. And I did try, I had photographed these three ducks with just fog. There are no trees just prior to 10 minutes prior to getting this image.
Gotcha.
And I tried to place them in the left bottom corner. Mm-hmm. But I wasn't happy with the composition. I said, even if I get this, it's just three, and I wanted some graphic elements, and that's the reason those trees help in this scenario.
So nice. Nikunj, let's talk a little bit about your edit. So here's straight out of camera. You can really see the foggy nature there. What were your goals and intentions with how you edited this photo? Because you can see here, we certainly went to a little bit more bold. You brought some of that stuff out. What was your thinking behind that edit?
So when I started, prior to editing this image, I initially thought about adjusting the white balance to give a bluish white balance, to give us but I didn't like it because there's no blue in it to begin with. So I then opted to just convert it into monochrome, black and white. Some of the things that I approached when editing this image was I wanted to provide clarity to the scene by showcasing the trees. I really wanted to showcase the trees. So I brightened the scene up a little bit. And the fog was too thick, so I dehazed the scene a little bit to bring out the details. as you can see in the raw file, it's a little bit quite foggy, but I just still wanted to retain the fog. So I basically made sure, let me provide more light to the scene, and then at the same time, give some contrast to the trees to showcase the trees as well.
Oh, you did such a great job. It's such a tough, interesting balance to walk with that dehaze slider because, yeah, sometimes we want to see through it more, but if you go too far, then it's kind of like, it doesn't look foggy anymore, you know? But I really like where you landed there. I think you retain that foggy vibe. I mean, it's very obviously has that foggy vibe in the final image. And I really like the added, I don't know if it was selective or not, or it just came with the overall dehazing, but the rich black contrast that came on the birds themselves, they really pop out of that scene, which I think is a really nice touch there as well. Real quick too, what kind of ducks are these? I forgot to ask you that.
I tried to identify those. I'm not so sure.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if they're like scalp or...
I think they could be scalp.
Ringneck,
they're
maybe?
not hooded mergansers. They could, yeah.
They're either scalp or ringneck would be my guess. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this lake has year round they have ringneck ducks.
Okay.
Not year round, in the winter they have ringneck ducks.
Yeah.
And hooded mergansers, and sometimes they get teals. But I don't think these are teals. I think they could be more like scalp.
Yeah, they look more like the ringneck shape, just like the shape of the head and everything like that. So that would be my best guess on that as well. So, well, dude, wonderful, wonderful image. Before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to add about the story of this shot that you'd like everybody to hear?
Just experiment with different conditions. For me, I made a conscious decision to photograph fog this year, and I've been pretty happy with what I got. This entire winter, I targeted foggy conditions just so I could showcase the shapes of the bird and the conditions that you could get in a specific area.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you did. I think that's actually really fascinating. I didn't expect that. I thought maybe this was just one of the mornings you were going out and you got lucky with some fog. So it's really cool to hear how you targeted the fog specifically. I think it's a very wonderful goal and a neat thing to try and capture something very different. And I mean, you achieved it. And for anybody interested, I'll make sure to include a link to your Instagram account. They should definitely check out the other versions of some other images you had, because there's so many stunning shots you got from this sort of foggy shooting of waterfowl over the winter. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing the story behind this shot, man. It was great to hear about it.
Yep. Thank you very much, Ray, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk about this image. I really love it. I'm going to print it one day.
Yeah, please do.
Yep.
Yeah, it deserves to be up on the wall, man. It's a great, like, especially those small in frame graphical nature things, like they just lend themselves to hanging up on the wall instead of that like close up of a bird, you know? Yeah. Great stuff, man. Well, keep it up. I look forward to seeing what you continue to come up with.
Thank you. Right. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you on the next one.